A crow sits in a research lab at the University of Tübingen. A researcher shows it a visual cue, the number 3. The crow pauses, then it caws once, twice, 3 times, exactly 3, on command. This isn't mimicry. This isn't a trick. This is vocal counting. And I'm going to show you the acoustic evidence that proves these birds are planning ahead like human toddlers. But first, you need to understand why this discovery changes everything we thought about bird intelligence. Counting seems simple. 1, 2, 3. But vocal counting requires 3 sophisticated abilities working together: numerical understanding, vocal control, and executive planning. You have to know what numbers are, control your voice precisely, and decide in advance how many sounds to make. Human children develop this around age 2 to 4, the same window where language explodes. Until May 2024, only humans were confirmed to count out loud. Then 3 carrion crows in Germany proved otherwise. The University of Tübingen's Animal Physiology Lab has spent decades studying Corvid cognition. Crows, ravens, DJs, these birds consistently shatter our assumptions. In this study, led by animal physiologist Diana Liao, 3 carrion crows were trained over months to produce 1 to 4 vocalizations in response to cues, not randomly, not by reflex, on demand. They published their findings in Science, one of the most prestigious journals in the world. And the acoustic evidence they captured reveals something stunning about how crow brains work. Here's how the experiment actually worked. The crows were shown visual cues, colored symbols representing numbers 1 through 4, or played audio cues of different tones. Their task was to produce that exact number of caws. In this training footage, the crow sees a blue symbol representing 3. It waits, then delivers 3 distinct vocalizations. A correct response earns a reward. But here's what the researchers noticed that led to the breakthrough discovery: the timing before that first caw. Analyzing thousands of vocalizations revealed something the naked eye couldn't catch. The crows weren't just reacting, they were planning. The acoustic properties of that very first caw could predict how many total caws would follow. Think about what that means. Before making a sound, the crow's brain had already decided the complete sequence. That's not stimulus response. That's executive function. If you're interested in what happens when we dig into the actual cognitive science behind animal intelligence, this channel investigates peer-reviewed research every week. Real studies, real evidence, real implications. The research team recorded and analyzed the acoustic structure of every single vocalization across hundreds of trials. They measured timing, pitch, duration, and amplitude. Patterns emerged. Crows preparing to produce for caws had different first caw characteristics than crows preparing for 2 stop before. I show you the acoustic evidence. You need to understand what we're actually measuring here, because this isn't about memorization or imitation. This is about a crow doing mental math before opening its beak, the same cognitive process your child uses when learning to count. In humans, numerical cognition involves the intraparietal sulcus, a brain region that lights up when we process quantities. Crows don't have this structure. Their brains evolved completely differently from mammals, yet they're achieving the same computational result through a completely different neural architecture. This is convergent evolution at the cognitive level. The crow brain solved the same problem the human brain solved, using entirely different hardware. That's like building a computer with wood instead of silicon and having it run the same software. But here's where it gets even more sophisticated. The acoustic analysis I'm about to show you proves something remarkable about planning and execution. The researchers found that errors weren't random. When crows made mistakes, they usually produced too many vocalizations, not too few. They started counting and couldn't stop precisely enough. If you've ever watched a toddler count on their fingers and go 1, 1, 1 instead of 1, 2, 3, you're watching the same developmental stage. Your 2-year-old and this crow are using the same cognitive system. Quick question: do you think intelligence is defined by brain structure or by cognitive ability? Type your answer below. Developmental psychologists have documented this exact pattern in human children. Around age 2, children enter what's called the pre-symbolic counting stage. They know numbers exist. They know counting means producing sounds in sequence, but they haven't mastered precise one-to-one correspondence yet. So they say 1, 1, 1 while pointing at 3 objects. The crows in this study showed identical patterns, same errors, same learning curve, same cognitive stage, and they said counting was just a human thing. Send this to anyone who still uses bird brain as an insult. Let me break down exactly what the researchers measured. First, reaction time, the delay between the cue and the first vocalization. Crows took longer before producing higher numbers, suggesting more complex mental preparation. Second, vocalization timing. The intervals between caws weren't random. They followed predictable patterns based on the target number. Third, and most critically, acoustic properties. The frequency, amplitude, and duration of that very first caw contained information about the intended sequence. The bird's brain was encoding the complete answer before vocalizing. The statistical correlation between first caw acoustics and total number produced was significant across all 3 crows tested. This isn't cherry-picked data from one exceptional bird. This is a reproducible finding. Wait, like a parrot repeating phrases. Let me show you why that's exactly what the researchers ruled out. Parrots and mockingbirds are vocal mimics. They copy sounds they hear. These crows weren't imitating. They were generating novel numerical sequences on demand using abstract symbols. Here's the verified acoustic analysis from the Science Journal publication. Look at this spectrogram. Each vocalization appears as a distinct pattern, but focus on the first one in each sequence. The researchers could predict with 70% accuracy how many total vocalizations would follow just by analyzing that first caw's properties. The crow doesn't just count, it announces its intention in the first sound. That's not a reflex. That's a declaration of intent. This is why we investigate the actual studies instead of just reporting headlines. Subscribe if you want the evidence, not just the story. But we're not done. Because behind every acoustic measurement is a bigger question. What does this tell us about the evolution of intelligence? Crows and humans last shared a common ancestor 320 million years ago. That ancestor was a small reptile-like creature with a brain the size of a walnut. Neither counting, nor vocal learning, nor executive planning existed yet. Yet somehow, through completely separate evolutionary paths, both lineages arrived at the same cognitive destination, the ability to count out loud. We use bird brain as an insult because bird brains are physically small. A crow's brain weighs about 10 grams. A human brain weighs about 1,400 grams. But this study proves that brain size isn't the limiting factor for complex cognition. neural density matters. Connection patterns matter. The crow brain packs neurons more densely than mammalian brains. Gram for gram, they might have more computational power than primates in certain domains. The insult is backwards. Bird brain should be a compliment. Think about what this means for how we define intelligence. For centuries, we've used human cognition as the gold standard. If an animal can't do what humans do, we call it less intelligent. But intelligence isn't a single ladder with humans at the top. It's a landscape with different peaks. Crows reached the counting peak through a completely different route. They don't teach this in neuroscience classes. The fact that there are multiple solutions to cognitive problems. Now you know what researchers have known since this study published. Intelligence is substratum dependent. Have you encountered animals doing things that surprised your assumptions about intelligence? Share your experience in the comments. And here's the part that affects you directly. Because this study was conducted in a laboratory with trained birds, but crows in the wild, the ones in your backyard, your city park, your local forest, they're vocalizing constantly. Alarm calls, contact calls, territorial announcements. Research from other Corvid species suggests their calls might already contain numerical information. We might be surrounded by wild animals counting out loud, and we just haven't been listening. This research builds on a study by Chris Templeton on chickadees, a different bird family entirely. He discovered that chickadees add more D sounds to their alarm calls when encountering larger, more dangerous predators. Chickadee-dee-dee for a small threat. Chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee for a larger one. University of Tübingen study, 2024. Templeton research, 2005. Same pattern emerging. Birds aren't just making noise, they're encoding numerical data into vocalizations. Check the bird feeders in your yard. Those alarm calls might contain counts of predators or flock members. Send this to someone who loves bird watching. The birds are talking. We're just now learning to listen. Here's current research on wild crow vocalizations from Cornell Lab of Ornithology's database. Analysis shows consistent patterns. Crows produce different numbers of calls in different contexts. Mobbing predators, recruiting flock members. The structure matches what we saw in the lab. Wild crows might already be doing what the lab crows learned. You're hearing this happen every day. The question is whether you'll recognize it now. Subscribe to understand what science reveals about the animals around you before someone tells you it's impossible. So now you know. Crows can count out loud using the same cognitive system as human toddlers. They plan their vocalizations before producing them. They make the same developmental errors young children make, and they might already be using numerical communication in the wild. Here's my controversial take. Intelligence testing is biased toward primate cognition. If we tested humans on crow-specific tasks, like three-dimensional spatial memory for thousands of hidden food caches, we'd fail miserably. Maybe smart isn't a hierarchy. Maybe it's specialized solutions to different survival problems. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments. But you can't unhear those crow calls now. Every caw in your neighborhood might carry more meaning than you thought. What hidden animal ability should we investigate next? Drop your suggestion below. But vocal counting isn't the only surprising discovery about Corvid cognition this year. Crows just entered their Stone Age, manufacturing standardized tools and passing the techniques to the next generation. It's cultural transmission of technology, and the research team documented the entire process. If these investigations into verified animal intelligence matter to you, subscribe and hit the bell. We examine peer-reviewed research that mainstream media skips every week. Real science, real evidence, real implications. Click here for the Crow Stone Age investigation, or watch this one about whale language if you missed it. The research continues. See you there.